Hey guys, it's Izzy here, and today we're going to be doing my January book haul. I'm going to be showing you all the books that came into my possession this month. So my main focus for buying this month was science fiction, so we will see quite a bit of science fiction, hence the title or thumbnail of this video, but let's get into it. The first book I actually got on the last day of last month, so on New Year's Eve. But since it is from a viewer, I wanted to show it in a formal sit-down video. So thank you, Ben, for getting me this book, and that is Ubik by Philip K. Dick. So the main character has a business that helps protect people from corporate clients from spyware. So spyware that might go into their mind, so the business's main goal is to give privacy and safety. The owner is hurt in an attack by a rival and is put into a coma in a dreamlike state. The other members of the company start experiencing strange things, like seeing the owner's face in places where it shouldn't be. So the technology is getting less intelligent, and the crew has to find out what is causing this phenomena before it is too late. So I am currently reading this book. You can see the bookmark. I am 73% of the way in. Right now it's like a 3-star, 3.5, and that ballpark. It's not the best book that I've read by Philip K. Dick, but it is not the worst. This will be like my third book by him, because I read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, a like short story collection. I'm not sure if it's every short story he ever wrote or like published, but that one was probably my favorite. Like, some of those stories are still with me. I obviously do remember Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and I have not seen the Blade Runner, so it is the book that I am remembering the plot and everything for. So his books are very memorable. This one was very confusing at the start, but it is getting more and more, like, I'm getting a better understanding as it goes along. Next we have Nolan, and this is the book 1 in the Rise and Fall series by Michael J. Sullivan. So the heir to the throne has been in exile for hundreds of years. He is suddenly reinstated to the military, to the front lines of the war. He's on a mission to rescue an outpost that is deep inside enemy lines. The thing is, the outpost does not exist. Someone has sent him there to look like his death is just another casualty of war, but who would be behind such an act? So I actually have read one book by Michael J. Sullivan, and I didn't realize it when I bought this book. So this is a fantasy. I don't know if I said that, but his last book was an average read for me. I think I might have even unhauled it because I could not find it, but it may be on one of my shelves somewhere. So I give authors 3 chances, and if I don't like all 3 of them, or this are all then I won't read anything else. So this is going to be Michael J. Sullivan's second chance, and hopefully I enjoy it. I think the synopsis sounds really interesting. I am curious of how these, I guess they're humans, have lived for hundreds of years, if the heir to the throne has been in exile that long. So I'm curious on that world building, and it's always fun to get into a fantasy world. So there's that cover, just to show y'all, because it is kind of unique. And so, and that one I got from Amazon. So we're going into my Barnes & Noble picks now. So the first one I got purely because it just sounded interesting. I could not find any graphic novels, which is something I set out to find there, but I could not find any, so I did resort to buying a few like random books. And this one was 50% off, and it's a hardback, so I felt like that was a great deal. So that is The Ballad of Laurel Springs by Janet Beard, who is also the internationally best-selling author of The Atomic Girls. I know a few people who have read that book, but I have not heard of this one. So a young girl has a school project where she has to research one of her ancestors, and she uncovers that her 4 times great-grandfather murdered his lover, and the act was written about in a ballad. So the girl's aunt is the one who tells her the story, and the girl believes everything that her aunt says is fact. So the story she's hearing, she thinks is fact, but there may be some underlying things. But this is a story of family, music, and violence. So I love historical fiction. I love multi-generational, multi-timeline. I don't know if we're going to get that here, but I think maybe that we may be getting some of the great-grandfathers, four times great-grandfathers, backstory and all of that. I think that should be super interesting. And I just love ancestry, and it seems like our main character is studying her own ancestry. So that's something that I think will be a lot of fun to read in a book, because I've never read something like that in a book. And it's just one of my favorite hobbies, is researching my ancestors. And the cover of this book just looks very Californian to me because of the ground, but it actually takes place in eastern Tennessee, and I have ancestors from like central Tennessee, so maybe I can relate a little to the characters. I don't think any of mine murdered their lovers, but who knows, because some stories just get lost to time, so I can't wait to pick up this one. The next book is very popular here on BookTube, and it is a science fiction, so we are sticking with that theme. And so this is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. So Darrow is a member of the lowest level of society. He is working on Mars to make it more livable for future generations. And he soon discovers that he is just a slave and that there are sprawling cities all across the planet. Darrow longs for justice for him and those who work alongside him. He gives away everything to take over an institute by the highest members of society, and he is forced to compete for his life. So I've heard that this is like Roman Empire inspired, so that really sparks my interest. I love reading things about Rome, and I love when fantasy or science fiction is inspired by real world things, especially history. So I cannot wait to pick this one up, and it is really short. I was expecting this to be much longer, so I don't know if maybe the hardbacks just make it look bigger than it actually is, but I do think it's less than 400 pages, so for a sci-fi book in a series, did not expect it to be so short. Now we have a book by my favorite science fiction author, and that is Sylvia Neuville. So this is A History of What Comes Next, a Take Them to the Stars novel. And I think this is his newest release. I read the Themis Files series. I started it in 2020 but finished it out in 2021, and I loved it. Probably my favorite science fiction series that I have read, and I recommend it to like everybody, even people who don't really read, just people who may be into like conspiracy theories or aliens, ancient civilization. I always recommend that book or that series because it just stands so true to like my personal beliefs, and then just as a fun book, and I really recommend it. So what is this one about? So Mia's family is the family that helped humankind get to space. The process has taken many lives and have made them choose between very difficult choices. It is now the 1940s, and Mia's turn has arrived in her family's succession. She has to convince a Nazi scientist to come over to the American side to help them with their own space race. So I didn't know that this was going to be like a historical thing. And this is also a satire. I have not read that many satires, but I think Sylvia Neuville is like the perfect author to do one, because I've liked the sense of humor in his other books, so I think it should be fun to read in this one. And I'm really excited because he's one of my favorite authors. Next, we have a last book in a series, and that is The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. So this is the book that is wrapping up the Poppy Wars series, which I'm going to read this book at the latter half of this week, and I cannot wait to get into it. I've been doing the audiobook for this series, and I have vlogged my experience reading the previous two books, and I will be vlogging my experience reading this one as well. I've been annotating them and all of that, so I cannot wait to see how the series wraps. But let me tell you about the first book, because I don't want to spoil the second and third books for you. So Rin was a war orphan, a shop girl, poor and unloved. The only way to get out of this life is to marry an old man or get an education. She does not want to marry a man who is 3 times her age, and she does not have enough money for a tutor. She studies on her own endlessly and gets herself into the highest ranking military academy in the empire. Once at the academy, she must deal with the prejudices of other students. She's either too dark, too poor, a girl. They judge her for everything, that is, until she shows them what she can do. That she is committed and willing to learn the powers of those used by shamans, and she is willing to end the war that has yet to come. So I really, really love this series and definitely recommend checking it out if you haven't already. Now we have a historical fiction, which is The Fortune Men by Nadifa Muhammad, and this is a Booker Prize finalist. I found out about this book through the channel Hardcover Hearts, but let me tell you what it is about. So Muhammad is a well-known in the sailing community of Tiger Bay in Cardiff, Everyone knows him for plenty of reasons, but not for murder. A local shopkeeper has been murdered, and people point fingers at Muhammad. He is not worried, as justice is usually served in the country of Wales, but he soon finds out about the prejudice and cruelties that comes with it. So this is about the last sentenced death in Wales, and I don't know a lot about the actual story behind it, so I'm going to read the book first and then go research the actual factual event that happened. So this is just, I think this is going to be really moving, and it takes place in Cardiff, which is one of my favorite places that I've been, and I haven't read any books that take place in Wales, so I would love to see that setting a lot more. So I cannot wait to get to this one. Now we are moving on to my book of the month picks. So this was the one that I chose for January 2022, and that is the Magnolia Palace by Fiona Davis. So Lillian is having a hard time after the death of her mother. The Spanish flu has ravaged the country, and America is just getting out of a war. Before all of that, Lillian was one of the most sought-out models in New York. She has inspired many great pieces of art all over the city, but after the death of her mother and a scandal, no one wants to hire her. That's when she comes across the Frick Mansion. Lillian jumps at the chance of having a job and becomes the secretary of the heiress to the family. So a common theme that I've been seeing in historical fiction books that are coming out in 2022 is the Spanish flu. I think COVID probably brought that to attention of a lot of people. I mean, I personally didn't know what the Spanish flu was before COVID, so I'm glad that I have learned new things and that the pandemic has brought new knowledge to my life. So this is a time period that I am very much fascinated by. World War I is one of my favorite things to learn about because I feel like it's New World meeting Old World, or more, Old World meeting New World. So I think this is such a fascinating time period as technology and just everything. Society is advancing so much as we get into the 20th century here. And I don't know. I just want to get to this, and I want there to be more books that take place in this time period. My add-on was an Alice Hoffman book, and that is the Book of Magic. So this is a book that is kind of far into a series. These books I think can be read as standalones, but I want to just tell y'all about the first book, which is Practical Magic, and I'm sure some of y'all have seen that movie, but for those of you who have not, I will tell the synopsis. So the Owens family in Massachusetts has been condemned as witches and blamed for anything that could go wrong in their small town for the past 200 years. As children, Julian and Sally did not accept the ridicule and were tossed aside as outsiders by their classmates. Their aunts come together to show them how to love themselves and what they are. So I think that's so nice of we should all love who we are, even if we're not witches, but we should love the people that we are and the people that we become and all of that. So I think that's very nice. I really loved the Rules of Magic by Alice Hoffman, so I definitely want to read her other books. So this is a science fiction new release that I think it came out at the tail end of last year, but it is one of my most anticipated books, and that is The Actual Star by Monica Byrne. So the story starts with the ancient Mayans, with questions of their existence and what will come next for their empire. Then it jumps ahead to 2012 when a woman goes into a journey in the jungles of Belize to find herself, and then another jump into the far future where this woman is seen as a religious icon. So we have themes of reincarnation in the book and just multi-timelines and all of that, which are the multi-timelines is one of my favorite tropes. I haven't read that much about reincarnation, so I think that will be interesting to see in a science fiction novel. It is quite a big book, but I am super, super excited for this, and I cannot wait to get to it. Then we have a book that I got in a subscription box. This was my first subscription box with Unplugged. So do check them out if you are wanting to find a subscription box for adult books. That's something I've been looking for so long, and I finally found one with them. So the first book is A Carson Ash by Julia Santopoulos. So Aislinn is a witch who has fought for control in many realms, including disputes with the Fae. She finally has her life together by having a fiancé, a stable relationship, but her fiancé happens to be Fae. Then a stranger comes in the mix who would do anything for Aislinn, and she now has two men who will protect her through anything. So this is a fantasy romance, which isn't something that I would typically pick up, but I think that's a cool thing with subscription boxes. I get new books I've never heard of and probably wouldn't have heard of. So I will dip my toes into the fantasy romance genre. So this book is, I read a trilogy in January each weekend, and I did it through ebooks, so I don't have a physical copy to show you. They are on my Amazon wishlist if any of you would be kind enough to buy me one, but don't feel obligated to do that because I will buy them at some point for myself. So the first book in the series is the book of the Unnamed Midwife, and I got that in a Goodreads giveaway like 2 years ago, maybe even 3 at this point, so I finally read it, and so that one was free, but then the next 2 I bought myself, and I bought them this month and read it. So I'm going to tell y'all what the first book is about because, like with the Poppy Wars, I don't want to spoil the future books for you. So a fever takes over the world, killing mainly women and children. This plague makes childbirth more deadly for the woman and infant involved. Enter the midwife. She is one of the women left, and she has to help others who are still out there, either helping them through birth or finding contraceptives for them in this world dominated by men. This is a science fiction book, but literally it's a horror novel for me. It scared me so much. Like, I have nightmares about it, but it was so good. The first book was a 5, and I think the other books do kind of get lower as it goes along, but it's still such a good series. It speaks to so many good points of feminism, sexuality, and then gender, and just talks about a lot of good things that's not just your average science fiction novel. But that series has also made me realize that I like pandemic books. So this one is one that came in the mail today, so I didn't have time to write up a synopsis. So this is How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. So I'm just going to read y'all the first paragraph in the synopsis. So in 2030, a grieving archaeologist arrives in the Arctic Circle to continue the work of his recently deceased daughter at the Bata Geica crater, where researchers are studying long-buried secrets now revealed in melting permafrost, including the perfectly preserved remains of a girl who appears to have died of an ancient virus. So the permafrost is melting in like our real world, so hopefully in 2030 we don't get another virus like an ancient virus coming out of there to kill us all, because that would not be fun, but it does make for a good book. So I cannot wait to get to this. I would have read it this weekend if I wasn't still reading Ubik by Philip K. Dick, but this is a new release that I'm super excited for. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, comment, rate, and subscribe, and be sure to ring that notification bell to be notified when all my videos go live. Bye!